I sold this house to my parents. You're no longer needed. Let's divorce quickly.
John said so, pointing at me and telling me to get out of the house quickly. He then started berating me. My in-laws joined in with John, laughing uproariously. But I did not flinch at such treatment and quietly accepted to leave this house. I had a plan. With the luggage I had already packed, I left the house. John and my in-laws do not know. The real hell is about to begin. My name is Sarah Johnson. I am in my 50s. Our marriage has entered its several decades, and our children have grown up and become independent. I used to work at a typical company, but now, through a friend's introduction, I am an instructor of handmade accessory making, which I originally did as a hobby. I feel that transitioning to an instructor was a good decision for me. My students are mostly kind and considerate people, and above all, I can do what I love the most, making accessories. There are people who say you shouldn't turn what you love into your job. But I've been blessed enough not to feel that way. I met my husband, now to be referred as John, at the company I used to work for. John worked for one of our clients, and as we met several times at parties, we gradually found ourselves drawn to each other. That led to us dating and eventually getting married. 3 years after getting married, we had a healthy baby boy. Our son grew up healthy, went on to a renowned university, and now works for a major corporation. He's also married now and leads a happy life with his beautiful wife. As parents, there's nothing more gratifying than our son's happiness. However, my own married life was anything but happy. I believe this started after we'd been married for over a decade, around the time our son became independent. John, who used to be so kind, changed his attitude.
Hey, Sarah, hurry up with the food.
He started giving orders and instructions as if he thought I was a convenient housekeeper. What's troublesome is that what he says changes every time. When he told me the clam chowder was too strong and to make it thinner, I did, and then he yelled at me that it was too thin and to make it stronger. I thought it was strange, so I tried serving clam chowder of the same thickness every day, and every day he complained that it was either too thin or too thick. I've noticed this before. He probably just wants to nitpick at me and cause me trouble. He's like a child, a troublesome person that there's just no dealing with. John is quick to anger and takes it out on me by spewing verbal abuse whenever anything happens. I want to escape from this kind of life. I want to end my life with John and run away. How many times have I thought about this since John's attitude changed? But there is a reason why I have to stay here. That's because I have to repay the housing loan. John has quit his job and is now living a lazy life at home, not working. Of course, he doesn't help with the housework. When I come home from work, there are cans of beer and snack wrappers scattered on the floor. John is in such a state that I am somehow making a living with the money I earn from working. Actually, this house has just recently been renovated. Of course, I am the one paying for the renovation. I keep track of the household budget, keeping a household ledger and such. In order to save money to build the house, I made every effort to save. The house that I built with all my efforts to save. If I leave this house, it will fall into John's hands. I absolutely didn't want that. Although it's true that I am making the loan payments, that's not the only reason. This house is a precious one, filled with my hopes and dreams. The exterior and interior design, the facilities, I built this house with attention to every detail. What I particularly like is the kitchen, which is wider than normal. That makes it very easy to work. When I was consulting with the designer, John interjected many times, but when I got angry, and said, "I'm the one paying, so I should be able to have my wishes fulfilled." John fell silent. A few months have passed since then. There were a lot of things that didn't go well, but somehow our house was completed safely. Due to budget constraints, not all my wishes were granted. But it is still the dream home I built with persistence. I was really happy to realize that. However, perhaps I was too particular, and I ended up exceeding the initial budget significantly, resulting in a substantial housing loan. Being in my 50s and having a large housing loan is honestly tough. But thinking about the realization of my dream home made me optimistic. Perhaps because John's wishes were not much reflected, he seemed somewhat unhappy.
We don't need such facilities. It's a waste of money.
John had complaints about everything, but as I continued to ignore him, he gradually stopped complaining. However, he started to harass me, deliberately littering and trashing the room. I suppose he's taking it out on me. I wonder how long this life will continue. I was spending my days in depression, thinking that every day. Then, a few months after the house was built, one day, the doorbell of the house rang. I wasn't supposed to have any visitors. Who could it be? As I wondered and was about to go to the front door, John got up and went to the door ahead of me. Could it be a visitor for John? And after a few seconds, a cheerful voice was heard from the entrance. Then, coming towards here, I was surprised at the person who opened the living room door and appeared. Robert and Karen. Why, there stood my in-laws. Father-in-law Robert and mother-in-law Karen. Actually, I don't think very highly of my in-laws. The trigger was when I went to greet them for marriage. As soon as my in-laws saw me, they started saying things like, "She looks dull and poor." Even on our wedding day, they complained about me for something or the other. Even after getting married, they interfered a lot and I was troubled by their unpleasant behavior. I have been relieved that they have been quiet recently, and there has been less contact, but they appear at such a timing. "Hello, good to see you again." Even when I greeted them, my in-laws ignored me. They bumped into my shoulder as if ignoring my very existence.
Look at this. This house is amazing, right?
Oh my, what a lovely house. The kitchen is wide and wonderful. I wish I could live in a house like this.
Indeed, it's a really good house. I'm envious.
John began to guide them around the house, as if to showcase the wonder of the house with his parents-in-law. A few minutes passed, and the in-laws who came back were laughing happily. But the calm atmosphere changed abruptly, and John started yelling at me as if giving an order.
Hey you. There's no tea or snacks. Don't keep my parents waiting. Hurry up and get ready.
So I hurried to prepare tea and snacks. However, since there were no scheduled guests, the snacks ended up being a miscellaneous collection. My in-laws got angry and said,
"It's unacceptable to entertain like this when the parents of the husband have come to visit."
You can't even prepare decent tea snacks. Po people are indeed different.
They kept complaining endlessly, and in the end, they drank all the tea and ate all the snacks.
But this is really a good house. I want to live here too.
You're always welcome if it's Dad and Mom.
After that, my in-laws left without so much as a thank you. Throughout their visit, they only had eyes for John and only looked at me to hurl insults. After they left, I thought I saw a smile on John's face, something I hadn't seen in a long time. From that day on, perhaps at John's invitation, my in-laws started to visit our house often. At first, it was about twice a month, but it became once a week. And recently, they have been coming to our house almost every day. Every time my in-laws come to the house, they only complain to me. And of course, John never defends me, he just nods along with their complaints. It's the worst when he joins in and badmouths me.
She doesn't listen to a word I say, and it's really causing me problems.
Is that so? Sarah really is hopeless. I was worried from the first time we met. But I never thought she would cause so much trouble for my son.
What are they talking about? I'm not causing any trouble. If anything, I'm the one who's having a hard time and want to complain. But of course, I can't say that, so I hide my true feelings and apologize. Since then, the in-laws' visits have been unceasing, and they seem to be coming to the house frequently. They seem to come to the house when I'm not there. So we're not face to face every day, but when I get home, there are often cans of alcohol scattered on the floor as if they've been having a party from daytime. My brand new carpet is stained from the leftover alcohol. Hey, at least gather the empty cans on the table, because of you guys. Our new home is stained, and it smells like alcohol. It's just the worst.
Stop nagging. You just need to shut up, earn money, and do as I say.
What is wrong with him? Doesn't he realize that the alcohol they are drinking is bought with the money I earned? What's more, it seems that John has started to gamble in addition to drinking. When I clean up the cans, I sometimes find crumpled betting slips. When I realized that John was gambling, I told him to stop. We don't have the money to spare for gambling in this house. I can't stand the thought of being burdened with debt from gambling losses. If he were gambling with his own money, it might be different. But I can't bear the thought of him using the money I earned. I am past being angry, and now I just feel desperate. And so, a few weeks have passed since my in-laws started frequenting my house. As usual, they come to play when I'm not at home. I wonder what I can do to change this situation. When I finished work early and came home, I saw my in-laws using the facilities of the house as if it were their own. What? I couldn't help but let out a sound. Noticing my presence, my in-laws clicked their tongues at me while giving me a stern look. They probably don't like that I'm at home. But this is my house. There's no reason for my in-laws to treat me like an intruder. However, I want to get out of this situation as soon as possible. To be honest, it's hard enough dealing with John, let alone having to deal with his parents too. I don't think my mental state can handle it. I must seriously do something about them. With that resolve, I decided to quickly devise a plan. And then, a few weeks later, unusually, my in-laws came over while I was at home. Hello, it's unusual for you to come over when I'm at home. Saying this with an unpleasant tone, my in-laws stared at me sharply.
We would have preferred to come when we wouldn't have to see your face.
As usual, your face is nothing to write home about.
It seems they really don't like me being around. My in-laws deliberately brushed past me, as if to push me away, and strode into the living room.
Dad, Mom, I've been waiting for you.
As John greeted his parents with a smile, he took them straight into the kitchen. Looking at the entrance, the shoes were haphazardly kicked off, giving no sense of behaving as guests. They must think this is their own house. As I peek into the kitchen, I see Karen happily touching the kitchen equipment.
Wow, this kitchen is wonderful. I can't wait to cook here.
Indeed. The food Mom makes here must be exquisite.
After exploring the kitchen, the three of them said, "Next is the bathroom," and headed to the bathroom. It's not their first visit, so it's strange for them to be inspecting the facilities of a house they've been to multiple times. It's as if they are making a final check of something. After touring the house, my in-laws left with excited expressions. What happened?
It's none of your business. Don't talk to me.
I tried to ask John, but he didn't tell me anything. But that's fine, because I don't need to be told. Why, you ask? Because I know everything that John and my in-laws have been doing. Unaware of this, John was trying to hide his scheming from me. John's antics were amusing, and I found myself laughing when he wasn't around. And then, a week later, when I finished work and returned home, there was a large truck parked in front of the house. The words "moving service" were printed on the body of the truck. My eyes met with John's, who was standing next to the truck. But John ignored me and went into the house with the mover he was talking to. By the way, is it safe to enter the house in this situation? As I was wondering what to do and watching from outside, my in-laws arrived as if they had timed it.
Oh, you are already home.
Damn it. Let's go inside quickly.
My in-laws glanced at me, but without saying a word. They treated me as if I didn't exist and went into the house. A few minutes later, the moving company had finished their work and left. Seeing them off were my in-laws and a man named John. And when the truck was completely out of sight, the three of them turned to me.
Oh, isn't that Sarah? I didn't realize you were back.
Oh, really? When did you get back? I didn't notice.
What do they mean, they didn't notice? They must have noticed.
There's something we need to talk about. Let's talk inside. Come in.
As I entered the house at John's request, I noticed that almost all the furniture had been replaced. And all of it looked familiar. It was all furniture from my in-laws' house. My favorite shelf, desk, and other pieces of furniture were nowhere to be found. It seems they were all removed by the moving company earlier. I sat down on the different transformed sofa, and the three of them addressed me with unnervingly cheerful smiles.
We're about to have an important discussion. But you don't have any right to refuse.
What's this important talk? When I asked that, John gleefully said,
I sold this house to my parents. You're no longer needed. Let's get divorced already.
My in-laws chimed in, adding their opinions.
That's right.
So, please get out already. You're a stranger now.
They both burst into laughter at this remark.
That's a classic. You're a stranger, so get out.
Mom, you're too funny. But it's true, this isn't your house anymore, so get out, stranger.
With that, John thrust a divorce form in front of me, his own sections already filled out. But I wasn't surprised. I knew all about their actions. Understood. I'll sign the divorce papers. I filled out the divorce form, took off my wedding ring, and placed it on the table. Then I stood up and said, I'll move out right away. Goodbye. The three of them seemed taken aback, probably thinking I'd fall apart. Ignoring their dumbfounded faces, I quickly packed my few belongings and left the house. Why was I not at all upset, you ask? Well, I had installed surveillance cameras in the house quite some time ago. I set up the surveillance cameras when my in-laws began to visit frequently. Every time they came over, they'd praise the house and say they wanted to live there. I was suspicious because they were visiting more frequently, and they always seemed to visit when I was not home. So, I suspected they were doing something when I wasn't there, and that's when I thought of the surveillance cameras. I was initially hesitant to install the cameras. Even if they were family, I thought it was wrong to invade their privacy. And if I installed the cameras and they didn't do anything, I'd be the bad guy. I had these conflicts, but as my mental state worsened day by day, I decided to install the cameras in the house. The recorded footage was accessible through my smartphone, which was a great feature. During my work breaks, I started checking the surveillance footage on my phone. The first day after setting up the camera, there was nothing unusual. The in-laws came to the house and just had their usual chat with John. Mostly, they were just listening to John's complaints about his daily life, with sad nods.
Po John having to go through all that.
What a terrible wife she is, making her husband feel bad like this.
Their voices were recorded perfectly. Who do they think is providing for their living expenses? The more I listen to their conversations, the more I think they couldn't manage without me, even though they wish I wasn't there. Then, after a few days, I see John and my in-laws on the screen, looking rather cheerful. I wonder if something good has happened. When I turned up the volume to listen in, it seemed John was telling them that he wanted to sell the house to them. I thought it must be a joke. However, the next day and the day after that, John was still talking about selling the house. He really was planning to sell this house to his parents. Moreover, his parents seemed quite excited about it, talking about buying new furniture, renovating for barrier-free access, and happily indulging in their fantasies. Realizing John was serious, I started secretly preparing to move to a new place. I had recorded everything, including the day the movers were scheduled to come and their discussion about divorcing me. So I made a plan to secure a new home in time for the day they would drive me out of the house. I also changed the name on the mortgage for that house. If we divorced, the house wouldn't belong to me anymore. I saw no reason to keep paying for a house I was being kicked out of. The person living in it should pay. Until now, I've been paying the monthly mortgage of around $2,500 since I'm the one who's working. I doubt John and his parents could afford that every month. But they're the ones who brought up the divorce, so I won't let them complain. Even if they were to come crying and begging for forgiveness, I would never lend them money or help them out. With that in mind, I headed towards my new home. In my new house, brand new furniture was already lined up, ready for me to start living there immediately. As I reflected on the day, I was hit with a wave of exhaustion. I lay down on the bed. Thankfully, I didn't have work the next day. Finally, I thought, I've managed to break free from John, and I fell asleep with a sense of relief. When I woke up, it was well past noon, and I had slept longer than I thought. I couldn't remember the last time I had slept so soundly. At least, since I got married to John, I had never slept this peacefully. Though I was hungry, sleepiness won. Should I just go back to sleep? Just as I was thinking about it, the doorbell rang. When I went to see who it was, there were John and my in-laws, looking quite angry. What are you guys doing here? I certainly hadn't told them about this house. I wonder how they found out about this house. As I was thinking about it, they kicked off their shoes and stormed into the house. And then, they threw down a piece of paper.
What's this? The name on the mortgage has been changed.
Well, of course. You guys and I are strangers now, and besides, I don't live in that house anymore.
That's not the point.
It seems that as soon as I left the house, a document notifying them of the name change on the mortgage arrived. They were apparently stunned to see the monthly payment amount.
There's no way we can afford to pay $2,500 a month when none of us is working.
Exactly. Our pension isn't even that much.
The in-laws talked as if everything was my fault. John nodded along as if he agreed with them. Honestly, it was difficult for me to be scolded like this. Sure, it might have been a mistake to build a house that requires a monthly mortgage payment of $2,500. It's true that we went over budget to meet my desires. However, who was the one who didn't listen to me, didn't work, and spent every day loafing around? Moreover, they tried to steal other people's property without permission. If they had known the amount of the mortgage, they wouldn't have done such a foolish thing. As I kept silent, John crumpled the document in his hand and confronted me.
We're not paying this. It's ridiculous.
Then, he crumpled the document and threw it on the floor. The in-laws didn't say anything either. I guess they don't know what will happen if they don't pay the mortgage. I started to feel sorry for these 3 people who don't know such a thing. I don't care if you don't pay, but do you know what happens if you don't?
What do you mean, what happens? Of course, you will have to pay.
John still seemed to think that I would ultimately pay. Being kind-hearted, I explained to John and his parents what would happen if they didn't make the payments. If you don't pay by the deadline, you'll be treated as delinquent, and late fees will start to accumulate. The more the days pass, the more the amount increases. You might end up having to pay more than $2,500 a month.
That's impossible. What kind of stupid thing are you talking about?
Stupid thing. It would be better for you to understand this properly. Why don't you look it up? When I said that, for some reason, Robert, with a triumphant look on his face, told John to look it up right away. Next to him, Karen also had a triumphant look on her face. A few seconds later, the look on John's face, who was confidently operating his smartphone saying, "That's impossible," gradually darkened.
What? That's got to be a lie.
That's what I've been saying. No matter how much you search, the results are the same. Right, Robert? The 3 of them turned pale as they looked at John's smartphone. Then, Karen spoke to me.
We don't have any money. That's right. You guys have savings, don't you? You can divide the assets.
John hasn't been working and he's been losing money on gambling. There's no such thing as marital assets. As I told them clearly, John's face became even paler. So, wouldn't it be better to give up quickly and start looking for a job?
After we've worked so hard as a couple for so many years. This attitude is unacceptable. Don't you have any desire to help?
That's right. How much do you think we've helped you all this time?
What on earth is this person talking about? Helped me? I can't remember a single instance where my in-laws helped me. You guys have never helped me. When I clearly stated that, the 3 of them, trying to please me, clung to me hoping that they could somehow continue to live as they had before. I got tired of it, thinking it was a waste of time to deal with them any longer. I drove the 3 noisy people out of the room and reported to the police that there are people making noise outside, pretending not to know them. I pretended not to know them, but there's no doubt that they are strangers. Afterwards, the 3 of them kept making a fuss in front of my house and were taken away by the police who received the report. After questioning, they seemingly determined they could not pay the mortgage after all and moved to a small apartment on the outskirts of town. Perhaps thinking they had to work due to this incident. They seemed to be going to various job interviews, but it appears they aren't being accepted anywhere. I heard a rumor that only John managed to get a part-time job and is taking care of my in-laws on a meager salary. As for me, I am living busy days with my work. Not only as a lecturer, but by starting a blog about handcrafts. My monthly income has more than doubled. The effect of the blog has also doubled the requests for lectures, so it's all good. At present, I haven't thought about remarriage yet. I plan to live on my own from now on. While tidying up my room, I found a notebook. It was a household account book I had kept desperately for living expenses. Oh, how nostalgic! I didn't know it was here. I unwittingly let out my muttering. Those days were hard, but I'll turn that hardship into strength and seize happiness with my own power. With that decision in my heart, I put away the household account book,